Good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Kay Truckenmiller, and we'd like to welcome you to the 4th Annual Comedy Cabaret evening here at Rancho, California. So welcome all. And before we get started, we would just ask that everyone who has a cell phone with them, if they could please silence it or turn it off before we get started. So.
Thank you. My name is Patty Week. These cabaret performances are presented by our very own Troupe de Trailer Trash Readers Theater Group. Let's face it, the older we get, but the older they get, the harder it is to memorize all these lines. So rather than embarrass ourselves any more than we already do, our comedy cabaret shows are performed with scripts in hand.
So before we go any further, however, we'd like to take a moment to remember Gene Rucker, who passed away a little over a week ago. Gene contributed his time and talents to our comedy cabaret shows every year by being our sound engineer and running the sound system. We want to honor Gene's memory tonight and also send a big thank you to his wife, Linda, who was by his side for each of our shows.
And also, thanks to Claude Wagner, who taped our shows. He put Awanga Housewives Go AWOL on YouTube last year. And to John Thurman, who's handling the soundboard this evening. Our shows could never have been presented if it weren't for these gentlemen. Thank you.
So, welcome to our night of humor, foolery, and funnies. All our comedy cabaret shows are original, written by our own Janice Harper, who draws from an internet joke base and ties the witticisms together in a script designed to tickle your funny bone.
There are 2 comedy cabaret performances this year. The Cooking Divas with Paula and Julia, which is tonight's show.
And Return of the Housewives, Revenge of the Husband. Set for Saturday, April 2nd. Be sure to mark your calendars for that one. Patty and I will be joined by Ro Goldberg and Janice for another ladies' night out.
And somehow, some way, our pesky husbands managed to work their way into the evening.
Steve's real happy to be part of the play. The first time I saw him, he was on stage. Unfortunately, it wasn't the first one out of town. You know how we always compare men and women? Well, Steve insists that men are just happier people than women.
Well, what do you expect? They are such simple creatures.
Their last name stays put.
The garage is always all theirs.
Wedding plans take care of themselves.
Chocolate is just another snack.
They can never be pregnant.
They can wear a white t-shirt to a water park.
They can wear no shirt to a water park.
Car mechanics tell men the truth.
The world is their urinal.
They never have to drive to another gas station restroom because that one was just too icky.
They don't have to stop and think of which way to turn a nut on a bolt.
Righty, tighty, People never stare at their chests when they're talking to them.
New shoes don't cut, blister, or mangle their feet.
They have one move all the time.
Phone conversations take maybe up to 30 seconds.
A 5-day vacation requires 1 suitcase.
Their underwear is $8.95 for a 3-pack.
2 pairs of shoes is more than enough.
They almost never have strap problems in public.
and they say where the same hairstyle lasts for years, maybe even decades. Or should we say hair shine? I don't know. wear shorts no matter how their legs look or if they shave that morning.
They can do their nails with a pocket knife.
They have freedom of choice of whether or not to grow a mustache.
Wait a minute. They can do Christmas shopping for 25 relatives on December 24th in 25 minutes.
No wonder men are happier. So, join us on April 2nd for even more insights into the differences between men and women.
And now, let's begin tonight's show. Ladies and gentlemen, straight from Savannah, Georgia, let's give a big Rancho welcome to the one and only Paula Dean.
My goodness, thank you, ladies, for that wonderful and titillating introduction. That was great. Another big hand for them, please. Ooh, I tell you, look at this place. This is absolutely incredible. Who does the decorating here? Who's that? Somebody told me it was a pretty little blonde lady, too. Actually, two pretty little blonde ladies. I see one of them right over here. Let's give a big hand for those ladies that decorate this place so beautifully. Trust me, this is nothing like my kitchen and my cooking show. Reminds me more like that Dancing with the Stars show I was on this last year. I mean, I had so much fun just dancing with that cute little Louis guy and wearing all those costumes that kind of went off the shoulder and loose to hide a little bit of chubbiness around the middle. Oh, but I'll tell you, my favorite costume. Remember the little cheerleading costume that I wore? Little red and white cheerleading costume, and I had those little red spankies on. And what did I put on the back of those little red spankies? Anybody remember? What? What? You don't remember what I had on the back of? I had Spank Me on the back of those. Oh, it was my best costume ever, and none of you. How many of you even watched that show? Did you see me on the show? Have you ever watched my cooking show? So some of you have heard of me before you came here tonight. I was afraid I was going to have to spell my name, you know, D-E-E-N, Paula Dean. I'll tell you, fickleness of fame, let me tell you. Well, it is good to have you here tonight, and thank you so much. I don't want to talk about me, because we is here tonight because of something else entirely different. Now, my all-time favorite cook is the one and only Julia Child. Julia Child! She is my heroine. I love the way she would cook. I mean, she would make a mistake and she'd just say, whoops, and she'd just go right on cooking and chopping and whatever, or she might even drop something on the floor, and then she'd just pick it up, wash it off, and just continue doing what she was doing. She just seemed to have so much fun in the kitchen. And that's me too. I mean, I believe you gotta have fun. You can't cook without some belly laughing. You know, that's the whole thing that makes it worthwhile. So I'll tell you, I grew up listening to Red Skelton. How many of you remember Red Skelton? All those jokes and all those quips he would come up with, well, there is one that I use a lot. Get this one. I have an electric blender, an electric toaster, and I have an electric bread maker. And so my hubby said, there is too many gadgets in here and there is no place to sit down. So guess what? I bought him an electric chair. Now that's what I mean. I mean, you got to have some fun in this life. So I always wish that Julia Child and I could just cook together because I knew we'd have a great time. But I was in the kitchen the other day, and I was trying to stuff this turkey, and I wasn't having much luck because this turkey just did not want to get stuffed. And so I was saying to myself, I wonder what Julia would do. What would she do about this turkey? And then I said to myself, dang, I wish Julia was here right now. And then I started huffing and I'm puffing, and I said, doggone it, Julia Child, you just get right down here right now. Well, let me tell you, you watch what you ask for, because poof, there she was standing in my kitchen. I did call, and I honestly didn't really expect you to answer, but please sit down.
Oh, thank you.
Have a seat.
A glass of vino?
I have some Temecula Valley wine right here for you.
Oh, bon appetit.
Bon appetit. Every time she does that, you know what you got to do? Every time Julia says bon appetit, you got to pick up your glass, and you got to do bon appetit. Bon appetit.
Bon appetit, my dear.
It is so good to have you here. Thank you very much for coming down.
Well, you know, this time travel thing, it isn't easy, and St. Peter's will not give the password to just anyone. But he heard your distress, dear, and so, everyone, bon appetit!
I just love the way she says that. Bon appetit!
Bon appetit! Well, you know the waiters in France, they would always say that when serving a meal, and it just seemed like the natural thing to say on my cooking shows, and, well, you know, my audiences just loved it. So, bon appetit, everyone! Yes!
So here we are, Miss Julia Child and me. I am so excited. Maybe she's going to share a little bit about her life in Paris, and she'll tell us about some of those famous people she knew. Maybe a cooking secret or two, and shucks, maybe you'll even share a recipe with us.
Well, of course I would do that for you. But please remember, I am on a schedule, and you know, St. Peter is a bit like the director. On my cooking show, everything is timed down to the second. And that includes how long he will let me stay here with you.
Well, then we better get right down to it. Okay, now, there is another famous French chef named James Beard. Is he up there with you?
Oh, but of course he is.
Now, you got to tell us about him, please.
Okay, well, Jim and I always cook together, and we cook together quite frequently, and he was such a dear man. You know, we were known as Gigi. You know, that was as in Jim and Julie, with the letter J pronounced the French way, you know. I will always treasure the comments he'd make about my book. I love your book, dear, he'd say. I only wish I'd written it myself.
There you have it, James Beard wanting to write
Yes,
a book.
yes, but you know, Jim and Paul and I still hang out together up there, you know. So, bon appetit, boys!
Bon appetit, bon appetit. And Paul, your husband, I read your book, My Life in France, and you just make him sound like such a wonderful person. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Oh, right. Well, you know, it was during the war, and we were both based in a lovely old tea plantation in Ceylon, of all places, and we were working in very different government jobs.
Ceylon?
Well, yes, you know, now it's called Sri Lanka, you know. But you know, Paul, he was 10 years older than me, and, well, he was quite worldly, if you know what I mean. We would take trips to the Temple of Tooth, or perhaps we would ride an elephant. And did you know that we came across an elephant who could turn on a faucet to get water for himself? It was amazing, and we would share all of the local food and customs. It was wonderful, and I used to say to myself, he's the kind of person that I've been missing my whole life.
Oh, that just makes my heart go pity-pat. But I tell you, an elephant that could turn on faucets? Whew. You know, I never have seen an elephant in real life. I did see a picture of an elephant once with Mahatma Gandhi riding on his back.
Oh, yes, dear Gandhi. But I'm surprised he was on an elephant, you know. He always walked barefoot, and, you know, he had very bad calluses on the bottom of those feet.
And, you know, according to that article, he ate very little, and he was just skinny and real fragile.
Well, just between you and me, he did have very bad breath. Yes.
Well, now let me think about that for a moment. That makes Gandhi a super calloused, fragile mystic, hexed by halitosis.
Oh, dear! I think they got it! You know, folks, it's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious!
Oh, bon appetit!
Bon appetit, my dear!
So tell me, Miss Julia, you and Paul met over there in Ceylon or Sri Lanka?
Well, yes, but we were back here in the States, and it was after the war when we actually married.
Oh, that just sounds so romantic. I mean,
It does.
meeting in a foreign country and then coming back here and getting hitched. You know what? Did you hear the one about the two antennas who met on a roof, fell in love, and they got married? Yeah, the ceremony wasn't much, but the reception was just excellent. You didn't get that, did you? Shall I do it again so you get it? Reception, not much, but
I don't think it's going to work a second time, dear. But I think you're testing my sense of humor. So, did you hear about the invisible man who married the invisible woman? Well, their children were nothing to look at.
you know, your sense of humor is doing just fine. So did you woo Paul with your skill in the kitchen?
Ooh, not at all, actually. I really didn't learn how to cook until we moved to France.
Oh, that's a shame because I learned to cook when I was a kid. I mean, my grandma Irene, she taught me how to cook because both my parents died when I was real young, and the kitchen was the place in which I just felt the most at home. I was making chicken and dumplings, and I was Georgia born and Georgia raised, and I married my high school sweetheart. And, well, he turned out to be not quite so sweet, but yeah, we was real young, and after my divorce, I had $200 to my name and 2 boys to raise.
Oh, dear, 2 boys, all on your own. I was never able to have my own children. You know, Paul would have made a wonderful father. You know, he was a twin, and, you know, he loved his brother's offsprings as if they were his own.
Paul was a twin.
Yes.
You know, I heard about a woman who had twins, and she gave them up for adoption. And one went to a family in Egypt, and they named him Amal. And the other went to a family in Spain, and they named him Juan. And Juan was real curious about his birth mama, so he did some investigation and found out who she was, and he sent her a picture. And when his birth mama got that picture, she says, "Oh, I'd love to see a picture of Amal, too." And her husband looked at her and he says, "Honey, they is twins. If you've seen one, you've seen them all."
Well, I guess I did open that door, didn't I? started cooking for a living?
Well, actually, I didn't start cooking for a long time for a living. I first tried I tried hanging wallpaper, and that didn't work too well. And then I tried selling real estate. But I had to admit, I loved the kitchen. And so eventually I started my own catering service. And I was real proud of the name I chose. I called it the Bag Lady.
The Bag Lady.
That's right.
What a wonderful name for a catering business.
Thank you.
But you know, that reminds me of two of my friends who graduated from medical school, and they had decided to open a practice together in Pasadena, but they had trouble naming the business. So you know, there was Dr. Smith, he was the psychiatrist, and Dr. Jones, well, he was the proctologist. Well, they put up a sign that read, Dr. Smith and Dr. Jones, hysterias and posteriors. Well, the town council was livid and insisted they changed it. So they tried schizoids and hemorrhoids. Well, this too was not acceptable. So they changed the sign to read catatonics and high colonics.
I'm not sure I didn't know about that one.
No, that didn't go very well either. So then they tried manic depressives and anal retentives. Well, needless to say, thumbs down. Then came minds and behinds. Well, that was still no good. Another attempt resulted in lost souls and buttholes. Still unacceptable.
Yes, they got real inventive, didn't they?
Well, they tried nuts and butts. No way, that one didn't fly. This one was cute. How about freaks and cheeks? Well, still no good. Another attempt, loons and moons. My favorite. Well, forget that one too. Well, they were almost at their wits' end, and the docs finally came up with Dr. Smith and Dr. Jones, specializing in odds and ends.
That is just too funny. And my bag lady minded you of that.
Well, since I've passed on, I've learned that you must have a sense of humor in this life and the next.
Well, I have to tell you that my bag lady did save a lot of wives a lot of time making lunches for their husbands. And as long as we're on that same subject, I got another story I'd like to tell you. So picture this. We got an Irishman, a Mexican, and a Norwegian. And they is all doing construction work on scaffolding on the 20th floor of a building. And so they're eating lunch. And the Irishman opens his lunch and he says, corned beef and cabbage. If I get corned beef and cabbage one more day, I am just jumping off this building. And so then that Mexican, he opened his lunch and he said, burrito again? If I get burritos one more time, I'm going to jump right with you. And then that Norwegian, he opened his lunch and he said, bologna again? If I get a bologna sandwich one more time, I'm jumping too. So the next day, the Irishman, he opens his lunchbox and there it is, his corned beef and cabbage, and so he just ups and jumps to his death. And then that Mexican, he opens his lunch and there's another burrito in there, and so he just ups and jumps too. And then the Norwegian, he's opening his lunch and he's going, bologna again, so the Norwegian, he jumps too. Dear. Well, then later on, they having the service, and here are all the wives, and they're all trying and everything like that. And the Irishman's wife, she says, if I'd have known he hated corned beef and cabbage so much, I'd never have given it to him. And the Mexican's wife says, I could make tacos and chili rellenos if you'd only told me. And then everybody turns and they look at the Norwegian's wife, and she's standing there and she shrugs her shoulders and she says, don't look at me, he made his own lunch. Now, if they would have just used the bag lady, it would have saved them all a lot of trouble. That's for damn sure. They don't be alive today.
That's right, you do have a great point, my dear. So whatever happened to the bag lady? I don't remember hearing about it anymore.
Well, she just eventually outgrew her own kitchen. I mean, got too busy, got not enough room. So it was time I opened my very own restaurant downtown Savannah. And I named it The Lady and Sons because at that point in time, Jamie and Bobby, they was old enough to be cooking with me.
Oh, my goodness. There you are, dear. That's something else I sadly never did, was to open my own restaurant.
Well, our specialty was a buffet, and we would include sweet potatoes and macaroni and cheese and deep fried Twinkies and, ooh, that fried chicken and cheesy meatloaf and some greens and beans and cream corn, and I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. And each meal we'd serve with a garlic cheese biscuit and a whole cake.
What?
But that's cornbread for all you northerners out there. Anyway, it turned out real successful for me and my boys.
Oh, that's definitely a Cinderella story, but that would only be in the cooking world, I believe.
Did you say Cinderella?
Oh, dear, I think I'm going to regret this reference.
Now you folks all know that Cinderella did grow old, just like all of us. And after the prince died, she'd sit in her rocking chair, and she'd watch the world go by from her front porch with her cat named Bob.
Oh.
Well, one it was a sunny afternoon, out of nowhere, appears her fairy godmother. Cinderella, you now live in a lonely life. Is there anything for which your heart still yearns? Well, Cinderella, she was overjoyed. Well, now, the prince was wonderful, but not much of an investor. I'm sort of living hand to mouth on my Social Security checks, and I just wish I was just a little bit wealthy. And instantly, her rocking chair just turned into pure gold.
Oh, my.
What do you want for your second wish? Oh, I wished I was young and full of the beauty and the youth I once had. And at once her wish became a reality, and her beautiful young visage returned, and Cinderella felt stirrings inside of her that had been dormant for years. You have one more wish. What shall it be? So Cinderella, she just looks over at that frightened cat in the corner and says, I wish for you to turn Bob, my old cat, into a kind and handsome young man. Well, magically, Bob suddenly underwent so fundamental a change to his biological makeup that, when he stood before her, he was a man so beautiful the likes of him neither she nor the world had ever seen before. Congratulations, Cinderella. Enjoy your new life. And with a blazing shock of bright blue electricity, that fairy godmother was gone. So, for a few moments, Bob and Cinderella looked into each other's eyes, and Cinderella, she sort of just sat there breathless, and then Bob walked over to Cinderella and held her close in his young, muscular arms, and he leaned in and he blew in her golden hair with his warm breath, and he whispers, I bet you're sorry now you had me neutered.
Bon appetit!
Okay, I told these folks we would talk about your cooking. I mean, you always seem to cook with such gusto.
Well, you know, Paul would say that when I skinned a wild hare, he'd swear I'd just been coming round the mountain with a bowie knife in my hand. Well, you know, he'd call me Jackdaw Julie after that slightly mad little bird that collects every kind of little stick or trinket or little tidbit to outfit its nest. Well, I must confess that I, too, stock up on all manner of culinary tools and machines. My kitchen has enough knives to supply a whole pirate ship. And I have copper vessels, terracotta vessels, tin vessels, enamel vessels, crockery, and porcelain vessels. I have measuring rods, scales, thermometers, tiny clocks, openers, rolling pins, marble slabs, and fancy extruders.
You know, I do like the crockery dishes, and I got a thermometer or two, but extruders?
Well, yes, dear, my kitchen positively gleamed with gadgets. Paul used to say if I had a need for jumper cables, they'd be in my kitchen too.
Jumper cables. You know, I heard about a set of jumper cables. Yeah, these jumper cables, they walked into a bar, and that bartender says, "I'll serve you, but don't you start anything."
Oh, dear. I find it amazing that you can take anything that I say and turn it into a joke.
Like I said earlier, you gotta have fun in this life. I mean, I still got a lot of living to do, not being passed on like you.
Well, dear, it's called dead. You know, it's just, why don't you just say it? I'm dead, and, well, frankly, my dear, so are you.
Well, now that just ain't so. I was living and breathing as these folks sitting right out there in the audience.
I don't think I'd use them as a reference point. I'm dead, they're dead drunk, and your career is as dead as a doornail.
Well, now you know I was on that dancing show.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid you are yesterday's news. Let's face it. Is this the best you can do?
Well, this is fine, folks, and just look at how happy they is for us to be here.
Just keep the wine flowing.
Oh, no!
Yes. So, Paula, you talked about jumper cables.
Yes, but don't start anything.
In a bar.
In a bar.
Well, I can do better than that. Two cows met in a bar. Daisy says to Dolly, "I was artificially inseminated this morning." So Dolly replies, "Well, I don't believe you." And Daisy answers her with, "It's true, no bull."
That is really bad. But I'm full of them too. I stayed up all night to see where the sun went, and then it dawned on me. Judy, you get that one, don't you?
Well, I'm reading a book about anti-gravity, and oh my, I can't put it down.
Right. Well, I got a job at a bakery because I needed dough.
Well, you know, England has no kidney bank, but it does have a Liverpool.
When you get a bladder infection, you're in trouble.
What do you call a dinosaur with an extensive vocabulary? A thesaurus.
just too much fun. But we need to let our audience learn more about you. I mean, in your book, My Life in France, there is a section where your hubby describes you in the kitchen. I mean, it's just a wonderful section, and I would read it, but I don't think my southern accent would do it justice. So I really want to get somebody from our audience to read it, and I tried talking to a few of you when you first came in, and there wasn't a one of you who would agree, but one person said, and then another person said, and then a third person said, get Marla. Is there a Marla in the house? Marla, are you out? Is she hiding? Somebody said she was here. Marla! We gotta have Marla up here. It's you, Marla. And I'm Paula, and this is Julia.
Oh, dear. What a pleasure.
Well, that's so
yes.
You just come right up here to this little microphone. John, you can give us a wide microphone here. Isn't she cute? Oh, she is just so cute.
She's so not on my bucket list.
Well, it is now, honey. He's got one to cross off whether it was there or not. You see this paragraph here? This is her husband, Paul,
Yes.
writing about what she is like in the kitchen. If you just step right up to that microphone and share this little passage with our folks out here.
Please do.
The second.
Can you hear her? You know, this is a mic. You speak there into that. Can I lower it a little bit?
I don't think so.
No, I can't. You just tiptoe, tiptoe. I could goose her. She's probably really not doing it.
The sight of Julie in front of her stove full of boiling, frying, and simmering foods has the same fascination for me as watching a kettle drummer at a symphony. Imagine this in your mind's eye. Julie with a blue denim apron on, a dish towel stuck under her belt, a spoon in each hand, stirring two pots at the same time. Morning bells are sounding off like signals from a podium, and garlic-flavored steam fills the air with odoriferous leitmotif. I did it. Odoriferous leitmotif.
I looked it up, folks. It just means good smells is what it means.
That's what we should
Whoa!
say. Well, okay. The oven door opens and shuts so fast you hardly notice the deft thrust of a spoon as she dips it into a casserole and up to her mouth for a taste check like a perfectly timed double beat on the drums. She stands there surrounded by her battery of instruments and with an air of authority and confidence.
Yes.
So that's the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
Yes. What about the bedroom?
Are you serious? I'm sure only somebody of your generation would have thought to ask that. Well, I will tell you, you do recall I said that Paul was 10 years older and quite worldly, if you know what I mean. So, we shall leave it at that. That's it. I hope that answered your question.
Let's all give Marla a big hand. She's one of those nice people. Well, I'll tell you. So, Julia, is what she read, is that really how it is?
Well, it sounds humorous, but that's just the way Paul puts it. But I did love my denim, now pink apron, and I always wore my dish towel in my belt, and that's just the way it was. But now, what about you, my dear? I've seen you do different things with your apron and towels.
Well, I always threw my towel over my shoulder because I had to have it there because I'd never be able to find it otherwise. I just am getting so forgetful. I just hate growing old.
Oh, and there are so many horrible stories about old people.
I know there is, but you know, I was talking to this cutest little Italian man the other day. He was so cute, and he was telling me that he and his wife was going to be celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary pretty soon, and he says to me, he says, I took my wife to Italy on our 25th wedding anniversary. And I said, well, that is so sweet, so what are you planning to do for your 50th? And he kind of looked at me, and he said, well, I'm thinking of bringing her back.
Well, dear, you are a funny lady. Well, 50 years. I'm sorry to say, Paul and I almost made it.
Yeah, he's dead, and you're dead, and I'm growing older by the minute. Shucks, if my body were a car, this is the time I would be thinking of trading it in on a newer model, because I have got bumps and dents and scratches in my finish, and my paint job is definitely getting a little dull, and these headlights is out of focus, and it's especially hard to see things up close. Now my traction is not quite as graceful as it once was, and I slip and I slide and I bump into things even in the best of weather. Oh, and then there's my white walls. My white walls are stained with varicose veins, and it takes me hours to reach my maximum speed, and this old fuel rate burns inefficiently. But shucks, you know what the worst of it is? Almost every time I sneeze or cough or sputter, either my radiator leaks or my exhaust backfires.
Well, dear, I'm afraid if you were a car, they'd probably send you to the junkyard.
A junkyard dog, yeah.
What? Could it be all of that sugar and butter that you put in all of your recipes, my dear?
But you love butter. I mean, real
Yes.
butter. That's what you've always said, real butter. I mean, they even got a package of butter in the exhibit of you in the Wax Museum.
Yes, but for some reason, people weren't as obese in the late 1900s as they are now. I don't know.
Well, I have cut down on my butter and my sugar, which is real hard for a Southern cook. But you know, French cook in the same way.
Yes.
So, Miss Julia, you are probably the most famous French chef of all, so you at least got to tell us a little bit about your life in Paris. I mean, did you learn the language? I've been just terrible at French.
Well, when we first moved there, I don't think any of the French could understand anything that I said. I just loathed my gauche accent and my impoverished phraseology, and I was abysmal in my high school French class. But the worst was when we went to a cocktail party with Poole and Hadley Maurer's apartment. You know, she was the former Mrs. Hemingway.
One of them famous people, they even wrote a book about her called The Paris Wife. I read it. I actually read it.
Well, but more than half of the guests were French, and I could barely say anything of any interest to any of them. You know, I am a talker, and my inability to communicate was hugely frustrating for me. So I started to take lessons. I found a little teacher who lived a short walk from our flat, and, well, she only charged a few francs for each session. And finally, I was able to communicate in a credible manner.
So tell us where you lived in Paris.
Oh, yes, it was a two-floor apartment in an old converted hotel. You know, it was a classic Parisian building on the left bank, and it was near all of the outdoor markets and sidewalk cafes. However, the building had no central heating and was as cold and damp as Lazarus's tomb. But thank goodness for the pot-belly stove we had.
Oh, well, was it expensive? I heard it was real expensive to live
Oh,
there.
my, on a government salary, Poole only made $95 a week. Can't even buy an iPod for crying out loud. The largest portion was for rent. $4 were for cigarettes. You know, everybody smoked in those days. We had $9 for the auto repairs and gas, $10 for insurance, magazine, and charities. We had $15 left for our clothes, our trips, and amusements. You know, it was very, very hard to live on a government salary back then.
Well, then what made you decide to study French cooking?
Well, Paul had bought me a French cookbook on my 37th birthday. Yes, and I devoured its pages furiously. I couldn't get over how absolutely delicious those French meals were. But I loved shopping for all those wonderful ingredients and all those fabulous outdoor markets.
Oh, now you gotta tell us that. I've heard they are so cute and quaint.
Oh, yes. The vegetable woman's cart was filled with the freshest produce of each season, and she was a darling little old creature, round and vigorous with such expressive twinkling eyes. I would buy the mushrooms and turnips or zucchinis and shallots from her several times a week. And then there was the cheese lady. She was a whiz at judging the ripeness of cheese. If you asked for a camembert, she would cock an eyebrow and ask at what time you wished to serve it. Lunch, dinner, 3 days hence. She would intently press the thumb into each piece of cheese, take a sniff, and I don't know how, but voila, she would hand you just the right one.
Did you ever use regular old cheese like American or cheddar?
Well, occasionally, but I prefer to leave those cheeses to you Southern cooks. Tell me a little bit more about your style of cooking.
Well, I do try to use recipes that ain't real troublesome. I mean, like my berry pie, I just have a graham cracker crust and I fill it with some berry preserves and then some fresh berries on top of that, and then some kind of a creamy topping. I mean, it's only 10 minutes and it's so good. Oh, and I like foods that's good and sweet and real sticky, like barbecue chicken. And I mean, everybody below the Mason-Dixon line that loves their chicken that way. It smells so divine when it's cooking. Oh, they ain't nothing better. It really ain't.
Well, but did you ever use thyme in your recipes?
Honey, I ain't got time to use thyme.
Oh, dear. Well, perhaps on that note, maybe it's time for me to leave.
No, I was just funny. No, I really was. No, don't leave now.
Well, I must admit you have an interesting, if not simple, sense of humor, perhaps typical of your background and your generation.
We do come from different backgrounds, different generations, that is for sure.
Well, remember, I was born in 1912 and died in 2004.
Whew, I didn't realize you was that old.
Well, dear, you're no spring chicken yourself.
Well, I guess not. I am going to tell you a true story. This is not a joke. This is a true story. I went into a Taco Bell the other day, and I ordered a burrito, and I ordered a Pepsi. And the young man behind the counter, he said $5.37, and so I had put out a $5 bill, and so I started rummaging for some more change, and he said, "Oh, that's okay. I'll just give you the senior citizens discount, only $4.80, and he put a couple dimes down and said, "There you go." Well, now, a senior discount. I mean, I took my food and I walked outside feeling I'd been insulted. My blood sort of began to boil. I mean, that rude little boy deserved a talking to, I decided, and so I turned around and I went right back inside and marched right up to that counter, and there he stood with that grin on his mouth and jingling something in his hands, and he says, "You can't get very far without your keys, can you?" Well, I stared in utter disdain at those car keys. I mean, leaving keys behind hardly makes me elderly. It could happen to anyone. It really could. So I grabbed him out of his hand, I turned and I headed to my car and I slipped the keys into the ignition and it wouldn't turn. So I tried a different key and slipped it in the ignition and it didn't turn either. And then I kind of noticed those purple beads hanging from the windshield, the big window, you know, that little mirror there. And then I noticed that little Happy Meal over there. And then I noticed that little car seat in the back. I tell you, I was out of that car so fast and into my own before you could say Jack Rabbit. And I was speeding out of that parking lot, so I'm finally thinking, oh my God, so I reached for my burrito. And I looked for my Pepsi. I left him back there. I left him back in that Taco Bell. So I forced myself to drive back to the Taco Bell, and there is that kid standing there, and I go in and I say, did I leave my food in here? And he said, no, ma'am, just your keys. And then some little kid's tugging at my skirt, and he's holding a bag, and he's holding a drink, and his mother's standing beside him, and she says, I think you left these in our car. And I apologize, and she says, oh, it's all right, dear. My grandmother does things like that all the time.
Baby, without worry.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I spit out of that Taco Bell. I spit out of there so fast. And when that patrolman says to me, ma'am, you was doing 85 in a 40-mile-an-hour zone, don't you think you was a little too old to be driving that fast? I am saying I am not too old. I am not. No, I am not too old.
Oh, my goodness, dear. That's all right. That was quite an adventure. But 85 in a 40-mile-an-hour zone? Did you get a ticket?
Oh, I just paid $300 for a flat Pepsi and a bad burrito.
Well, I don't think I've ever driven a car quite that fast in my entire life. But of course, they didn't go that fast when I was alive. But you needn't feel old, dear. Just don't worry about it, because consider I was close to 90 when I died, and, well, maybe you are a spring chicken, dear.
You're just trying to make me feel better, I know.
Yes, let me tell you the situation I know of. There were 3 sisters. One was 92, 94, and 96. All of them were widows, and they were sharing in the same house. So one night, the 96-year-old pours herself a bath, and then she yells downstairs, was I getting in or out of the bath? Well, the 94-year-old yells back, well, I don't know. I'll come up and see. But, wait a minute. Was I going up or down the stairs? Well, the 92-year-old was sitting in the kitchen having a cup of tea while listening to these two. I hope I never get that forgetful, she said, knocking on the table for good luck. Then she yells to the others, I'll come up and help you both after I see who's at the door. Oh, you did get that, didn't you?
Thank goodness, that means I'm not that old since I got the joke. Oh my God. Oh, Miss Julia. All right, just tell me, how is things different for you than they is for me and my generation?
Well, in 1912, the average expectancy for men was 47 years old. We'd all be gone. Did you know that fuel for a car was only sold in a drugstore?
With your prescriptions and
Yes,
stuff?
yes. Only 8% of all homes had a telephone. And the average U.S. wage was 22 cents an hour, and salaries were between $200 and $400 a year. Sugar was a pound.
That is amazing.
Well, they used to say heroin, marijuana, and morphine were all available over the counter at those local drugstores where you stop to get your gas.
Just like that, you could buy it.
Yes. Well, back then, the pharmacist used to say that heroin would clear your complexion and gives buoyancy to one's mind, and it regulates the stomach and bowels, and in fact is a perfect guardian of health.
That is absolutely, things certainly have changed, haven't they? Well, you know, we didn't have a television until I was about 12, and the only phone we had was in the living room, and then we was on a party line, so we had to listen first before we dialed, in case it was already in use. Oh, but I just love to listen in anyway.
And you know that my brother delivered a newspaper 6 days a week, and it would cost 7 cents a paper, of which he got to keep 2 cents. And on Saturday, he would collect the 42 cents from all of his customers. And of course, his favorite ones were the ones who gave him the 50 cents and said very kindly to keep the change. And then his least favorite were those who somehow never appeared to be home on collection day.
And that would be my mammy and pappy, I'm afraid. Yep. Well, I tell you, when I was a kid, we didn't have any PlayStations, Nintendos, Xboxes, these the U's, no video games, no cell phones, no nothing.
Well, you know, the 1900s saw 2 world wars, Korea and Vietnam, as well as an explosion of innovation and new ideas. We had freedom, failure, success, and responsibility, and we learned how to deal with all of that.
You know, and some of us, like me, are still in that dealing with it phase. But I guess it's probably time I just stopped trying to pass the buck and realize that the buck stops right here with me.
Well, dear, do you know, that's an interesting phrase that actually originated in the Old West. Most men in those days carried a jackknife, and it was made by the Buck Knife Company. And when playing poker, a buck knife was placed in front of the dealer so that everyone knew who he was. When it was time for a new dealer, the deck of cards and the knife were passed to the next person. If someone wanted to deal, he'd pass the buck to the next player. If that player accepted, well, the buck stopped there.
You know, I love how the expressions started. I mean, I know another Old West one. It's called a shot of whiskey. You've heard about that one? Shot of whiskey? Well, back then, a .45 cartridge for a 6-gun cost 12 cents. And so did a glass of whiskey. So if the cowboy was a little low on cash, he'd just give the bartender a cartridge in exchange for a drink, and that was a shot of whiskey.
Oh, fascinating. And speaking of bullets, what about the whole 9 yards? Do you know it was American fighters in their fighter planes in World War II? They had 50 caliber machine guns that were fed by a linked belt of cartridges. The average plane held belts that were 27 feet long, 9 yards. So, if a pilot used up all of his ammo, he was said to have given it the whole 9 yards.
Well, and then there's buying the farm, and that basically meant just dying. But during World War I, soldiers were given life insurance policies worth $5,000, and that was about the price of an average farm in the 1920s and 1930s. So basically, if you died, you bought the farm for your survivors.
Yes. Well, and speaking of the 1930s, that's when the origins of the redneck go back to a number of union disputes in West Virginia. Miners marched to pressure the mine owners to allow them to become unionized. So, to identify themselves, all miners wore red bandanas around their necks. So that created the term rednecks. And at that time, they were viewed as the good guys in the conflict.
Okay, I'm going to lighten this up a little bit because I got a redneck love poem which gives that term a different meaning entirely. So listen to this. Susie Lee done fell in love and she planned to marry Joe. She was so happy about it all, she told her pappy so. And pappy told her, Susie gal, oh, you better find another. I just as soon your ma don't know, but Joe is your half-brother. So Susie put aside her Joe and she planned to marry Will. But after telling Pappy this, he said, there's trouble still. You cannot marry Will, my gal, and please don't tell your mother, but Will and Joe and several more I know, well, they is all your half-brother. But Mama knew. And Mama pulled Susie close and she said, my child, just do what makes you happy. Marry Will or marry Joe, you ain't no kin to Pappy.
Is another term pulled over a barrel.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'm sure that one of them may have been.
Yes.
In the days before CPR, a drowning victim would be placed face down over the barrel, and the barrel would be rolled back and forth in an effort to empty the lungs of the water. Well, sadly, it was rarely effective. So, if you're over a barrel, you are in deep trouble.
I'd say that is hogwash, but it really isn't. That is the truth. And you know, speaking of hogwash, steamboats carried both people and animals. And those pigs, they smelled so bad that they would be washed off before they were put on board. And so that mud and that filth and all that useless stuff and that stuff that didn't make any sense to be on board, they called it hogwash.
Oh,
Bad news.
oh, how unpleasant. But it does remind me of a joke.
I did it. I got her to remind her. I reminded you of a joke.
Yes, you did. Finally this time. So, there was Robert, who was 85. He married Jenny, a lovely 25-year-old. Well, Jenny was warned about marrying somebody so old, but she just said, that's hogwash. Age is only a number on a piece of paper. But she did start thinking and decided because of Robert's age, they should have separate bedrooms because she was concerned that her new but aged husband may overexert himself if they spent the whole night together. So, after the wedding festivities, Jenny prepared herself for bed and a knock came at the door. Well, there was Robert, her 85-year-old groom, and he was ready for action. And they unite as one. Well, all goes well, and Robert takes leave of his bride, and she prepares to go to sleep. And a few minutes later, Jenny hears another knocking at the door. And it's Robert. Well, again, he's ready for more action. Well, somewhat surprised, Jenny consents for more coupling. When the newlyweds are done, Robert kisses his bride, bids her a fond good night, and leaves. Well, she's set to go to sleep again But, you guessed it, Robert is back again, wrapping up the door.
Bon appetit,
And he's as fresh as a 25-year-old, ready for more action. But as Robert set to leave again, his young bride says to him, I am thoroughly impressed that at your age, you can perform so well and so often. I've been with guys less than a third of your age, and well, they were only good once. Oh, Robert, you are truly a good lover. Well, Robert, somewhat embarrassed, turns to Jenny and says, You mean I was already here?
Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, what does it matter? So my hogwash minded you of that. Oh, that is too much. Well, now, my old couple is in their 70s, is what I'm going to tell you about. And they was visiting their kids, who's in their 50s. And then so the father's, for some reason, he's in the medicine cabinet in the bathroom, and he sees this little bottle of Viagra in his son's medicine cabinet, and he asks his son about using one of those pills. And the son says, well, I don't really think you should, Dad. They're pretty powerful, and besides, they're kind of expensive. How much? Well, the kid says, well, they're $10 a pill, Dad. So his father says, well, I don't care. I might like to try one. And if I do, I'll put the money under my pillow before we leave in the morning. So the next morning, the son goes into the bedroom his parents used, and he finds $110 under the pillow. He calls his dad and he says, Dad, I told you each pill was $10, not $110. And his dad says with some great pleasure in his voice, he says, I know, son, the 100 is from your mom.
Well, now that we've moved from some good old times to some really bad jokes, let me share one. It has nothing to do with sex, old people, blondes, or husbands.
It doesn't sound like it's going to be any good.
Well, this one is really bad because it's about a bad Taliban terrorist.
This is not your usual topic for a joke. Is this what they call ethnic humor?
Oh, indeed. So, here goes.
Listen carefully, folks.
A fleeing Taliban terrorist, desperate for some water, was plodding through the Afghan desert when he saw something far off in the distance. Well, hoping to find water, he hurried toward the mirage, only to find a very frail little old Jewish man standing at a makeshift display rack selling ties. So the Taliban terrorist asked, Do you have any water? Well, the old man replied, I have no water. Would you like to buy a tie? They're only $5. Well, the Taliban shouted hysterically, Idiot, infidel, I do not need such an overpriced Western adornment. I spit on your ties. I need water. Well, sorry, I have none. Just ties. Pure silk and only $5. Well, pah! Curse on your ties. I should wrap one of those ties around your scrawny little neck and choke the life out of you. But I must conserve my energy and find some water. Well, okay, said the little Jewish man. It does not matter that you do not want to buy a tie from me, or that you hate me and have threatened my life and called me an infidel, I will show you that I am bigger than that. So if you continue over that hill to the east, about 2 miles, you will find a restaurant. It has the finest food and all of the cold water you might need. So, my friend, go in peace. Well, cursing him again, the desperate Taliban staggered away over the hill. Well, several hours later, he was crawling back, almost dead, and gasped, "They won't let me in without a tie!"
To the good old times. You know, I got an older than dirt quiz. If you know any of these things, just hold up your hand if you know any of these things. How about your blackjack chewing gum? Remember that? Yeah. How about those wax Coke-shaped bottles with that blue colored sugar water inside of them? Candy cigarettes? Yeah. How about soda pop machines that dispense glass bottles? Glass bottles! Or coffee shops and diners that had those little tables like jukeboxes playing those little rockabilly, rockabilly, rock. Oh, and then there's whole milk delivery with glass bottles that have those little cardboard stoppers on them. Newsreels before the movie. PF flyers. How about S&H green stamps? That's the thing.
Yes, well, you know, there are certain advantages if you are old enough to remember most of those things.
What would they be?
Well, I'll tell you. In a hostage situation, you are likely to be released first. Friends call at 9 p.m. and ask, "Did I wake you?" People no longer view you as a hypochondriac. There is nothing left to learn the hard way. The things that you buy now won't wear out. You can eat supper at 4 p.m.
How many of you did that tonight?
And you can live without sex, but not your glasses.
Oh, it is so nice to be with you fine people tonight. And we really need to have Julia Child give us at least one cooking hint. Now, since I was trying to stuff a turkey when she came to visit me, let's find out Julia Child's secret on how to stuff a turkey.
Well, my dear, let me tell you, it's a matter of how you address the turkey.
So you damned old bird just doesn't do it?
Seriously, my dear, even dead, the fowl must be shown proper respect. So let me tell you, I've become an expert plucker, skinner, and deboner. I've learned the secret of pulling out all of the guts from a turkey or a chicken through the tiny little hole in its neck. And then, from that same little orifice, I've loosened the skin from the flesh in order to put an array of truffles or whatever goodies you wish to insert.
You know, I wasn't really talking about the little hole. I was trying to stuff the body of the turkey, and it just didn't cooperate.
Well, once you've removed the guts as I've described, wash it out very carefully, inside and out, to remove those awful little tendons and brown goopy gobs. You know, then you must place the bird in the baking pan, breast up. Right? rye filled with seasoned breadcrumbs or cornbread, excuse me, hoe cake, yes, as you would call it, onions or scallions, peppers, and mixed well with eggs. Then you simply slide your left hand under the buttocks of the turkey. With your right hand, you spread those legs apart as far as you can. After that, you simply reach into the bowl with your right hand, grab a handful, and stuff that puppy into the bird, keeping the buttocks raised. If one handful isn't enough, then spread those legs again and stuff in another handful, and just keep pumping the goodies in until the bird is all filled up.
Well, there you have it, folks. Gusto on the stuffing turkey. Well, you know, I have to admit, I'm into real simple cooking, and that French cooking was always way too difficult for me, but your soul a la Normandy, that was easy to fix, and it was so good. I hope you don't mind sharing that recipe.
Oh, you know, dear, it's really time for me to go, as I'm feeling a gentle pulling from St. Peter's.
No, we don't want to get in his bad graces. All I did, you see those papers down there on the table? I had my son type up the recipes for your soul and for my strawberry cake, and I put them there for souvenirs for all these folks. I was just saying, I hope you didn't mind.
Oh, no, dear, but how thoughtful of you. But I really, really must be going.
St. Peter, 1 minute, just 1 minute.
Oh.
I mean, I want to tell Miss Julia and these nice folks here about a health warning that is finally useful. This is a shampoo warning. Now, I don't know why I didn't figure out sooner, but I do use shampoo in the shower. And when I wash my hair, the shampoo just sort of runs down my whole body. Imprinted very clearly on the shampoo label is this warning: for extra body and volume. It is no wonder I have been gaining weight. I got rid of that shampoo, and I am now going to start showering with Dawn dishwashing soap because its label reads,
Dissolve